boy, sweet Jesus. Um, I'm your host. This is Sam. Say hi to the folks at home.
Hi, folks at home.
Dear listener, I am, I tried to be as unbiased as possible. And it's not easy, right? Like, when Matt Reeves replaced Ben Affleck on The Batman, I was like, you know what? This wasn't Matt Reeves' fault. This was a studio thing. Let's not judge this. Let's not look at it as the thing that took the spot that belonged to the thing I wanted. Let's look at it as its own thing that is a result of someone else's incompetence. Oh my god, it's hard to do that for Superman Legacy, though, because they literally canceled, like, Matt Reeves didn't cancel Ben Affleck's thing. He was just the guy who filled the gap when they did. James Gunn canceled Henry Cavill's script that was in progress and cut all of his stuff so he could make his own shit fest. And, you know how a lot of people are like, oh, the Justice League got formed too soon in the Snyder stuff. You know, where are their solo movies? Why did Wonder Woman's solo movie come after Batman vs. Superman? Why did X, Y, and Z happen? Well, apparently those rules are for thee, but not for me. Because Superman Legacy has announced 3 more castings. So you have your Superman, you have your Lois Lane, no announcement on Jimmy Olsen, and Krypto the Superdog, who will be in this movie already. And mind you, all this stuff is happening ahead of a actor's strike, and the work is being done during a writer's strike. So, like, Matt Reeves hasn't been working on his Batman sequel, like, at all, because he's doing it in, like, congruity with trying to get living wages for the people around him.
Yeah.
Mustache Daddy cares about his people. James Gunn does not. Well, he cares about his friends. So, do you want me to tell you the actors or the characters, and then you try to guess?
I'm never going to be able to guess who he's cast for the characters.
Okay. So you remember the mutant who could evolve from anything but died?
Yeah.
Okay, so he's been cast in Superman Legacy. Do you remember Nathan Fillion?
Yeah.
Do you remember Dora the Explorer from Transformers The Worst One, where she had the little BB-8 ripoff?
Yeah.
So those are the 3 that have been cast.
I'm not comfortable with that last one.
No one should be. She's barely 20. Like, I know James likes them young, but geez, her last acting role was literally Dora the Explorer. Okay, who do you think she's playing? I'll give you a hint. She's a member of the Justice League in the animated series. Yeah, that's the correct reaction of shock and shaking your head in confusion. She should be on the Teen Titans at that age. Yeah.
That's pushing it.
Until you're out of, like, college age, you shouldn't be on the Justice League.
I genuinely can't picture her as anyone on the Justice League because they're all, like, veteran members of,
you might assume, like, Jessica Cruz, right? Like, the youngest Green Lantern. No, she's Hawkgirl. That's right. They saw the CW and said, we can do worse.
So, wait. Does James Gunn just not perceive what older women look like anymore?
It's weird. It's weird.
It's immediately gross.
Yeah. Who do you think everyone's favorite mutant is playing? This one is a sort of more background character in the Justice League animated franchise.
I mean, my first thought was Jimmy Olsen because he was being, like, in CW stuff, cast as just
I understand why you would assume that. No, he's Mr. Terrific. So we're going to be looking at his fantastic balls on screen. I expect there to be no less than 5 jokes about his balls.
Oh no, is that the only reason he's in this?
I would not be surprised. That, and legitimately, James Gunn has had online beef with a guy on Twitter who has a Mr. Terrific profile picture, has for years, and they've gone back and forth quite a bit. They've exchanged some pretty heavy fire.
Revenge casting?
He could genuinely... I think maybe he was going to have someone anyway, but he was like, that tipped the needle. I mean, if I was full conspiracy theorist, I'd say he's just a man-child, which fits the profile of everything else he's doing. But yeah, so that's life there. And Nathan Fillion. This is a real fucking monkey's paw situation.
Okay.
Who has Nathan Fillion been fan cast forever and even played in some mediums?
Green Lantern?
Yep, he's Green Lantern. Guy Gardner.
God
He's Guy Gardner, not Hal
But that's
Jordan.
but he's always voiced the Hal Jordan one.
Yeah, no, he's never been Guy Gardner. He's not a ginger. He's too old for Guy
Why
Gardner.
make him Guy Gardner?
Do I look like I fucking know? Here's my assumption, right? I think he wanted to get a D-list Green Lantern on the board to imply Green Lanterns. Knew that the studio would be okay with casting his buddy in the role. And then they can still find like a big talent like Tom Cruise to play Hal Jordan in a future movie if they can spin it off. But this way he gets his nepotism friendship casting locked in. But the studio won't be like, we were kind of hoping you'd get someone with a little bit more star power. That's my only assumption. But mind you, the last time Nathan Fillion made headlines, it's because he went on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast and said that everyone should give Joss Whedon another chance. In like 2023 or 2022, mind you. So this wasn't like, well, we're still waiting to see what happened. It's everyone knows he doesn't care. Which sucks, because, you know, I was a fan of his work for a long time growing up, you know. Two Guys, a Girl, and a Pizza Place era and beyond, which is a reference almost no one will get except for probably him. I watched a lot of Castle back in the day. Watched Firefly, watched Serenity.
I've watched too much Castle. Mom and Dad kept putting it on.
So, yeah, those are, and by the way, this is a Superman solo movie that is now an ensemble.
Why is there an ensemble in a solo movie?
Because James Gunn legitimately thinks he understands Marvel better than Kevin Feige. He was giving notes on every Marvel movie, whether he was asked to or not. He was just providing them of like, hey, I made Guardians of the Galaxy, so I'm kind of a big deal. And he was just offering that as like, you know, because clearly you need my help. And this is at the same time he's saying, oh, I don't want Kevin Feige's job. I don't want to lead DC. You know, I just want to make my Suicide Squad movies. Ha 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 ha. I'll just lose $150 million for the studio and then fail my way upwards into the CEO position and then make the Superman movie that I said I didn't want to make and cast all the people who I said. He even said that Jason Momoa wouldn't play Lobo because they'd never do if you were in the DCEU, now you're playing someone else in the DCU. You either stay as your character through the reboot or you don't show up again. But Nathan Fillion was in the Suicide Squad, not as Guy Gardner. So that was another fucking lie. And I'm just like, and mind you, this is all during the whole situation of, hey, where's the Blue Beetle trailer? Mm-hmm. And there just wasn't one until literally people harassed him, and then like 24 hours later, Warner Brothers pumped out a really cheaply made trailer that I'm convinced they commissioned whenever he started getting blown up all over social media for people being like, the movie comes out in less than a month, dude. No one else is talking about this except for like nerds on Twitter. And those are the same people who had a Flash profile picture a week ago who just shifted in like a revolver chamber. They clocked it over one. This is my new personality. And then when Blue Beetle fails, because it's a cheaply made movie with George Lopez in it, and that hasn't been advertised, then they'll shift over to Superman Legacy. Or maybe they'll go Aquaman 2, and then Superman Legacy, or whatever. There's zero actual brand loyalty. They're like babies with a bright color in front of them. There's no cognitive... It's ridiculous.
It's weird.
So yeah, arguably the worst part of the worst Transformers movie, which is saying a lot.
I mean, like, if it was an MCU thing, I could kind of understand, because for a while I was like, I want it to be good. Let's just hold out hope that it's good. And then for a while it's just not.
Mm-hmm.
So I could understand trying to hold on to that extent. But, like, one, he's already taking away the parts that people liked and swapping it out for his own thing. And everything he's done under his banner, from what I understand and have been hearing, is not good.
Financially, it isn't. And from my very biased... I'm not going to act like I'm some unbiased person in this. I had a Superman movie that was going to come my way, made by someone I like in the role, and this guy stepped in, said no, and is making his own shittier version of it. I'm no longer like, well, let's give it a shot. I'm no longer trying to force myself to pretend that everyone deserves a fair shake. This guy's an asshole, and he's... Imagine the cost now of paying all those actors and doing all of those costumes and those action sequences. He could have made a smaller budget, like, you know, $50 million, like a Venom movie, Morbius movie scale budget. You know, big enough to have some spectacle, but not so big that you have to earn 400, 500, 800 million dollars to break even. Because let's be honest, if this movie doesn't break even, there is no reason he should maintain his position at DC.
Granted, we already established he failed upwards into it, so who knows?
Yeah, so maybe he'll fail into like President of the United States or something.
Ugh.
I'm in the middle of writing a book about how the sort of weird DC
You're literally
fandom
writing
splitting.
the book on what's going wrong.
And I've gone out of my way to exclude conversation of James Gunn. The most I've had is I've said, you have to admit, whether you think he's a creep or not, his brand was pretty rough, so giving him a huge budget with the Suicide Squad and betting all your chips on this guy who's at the height of his controversy was a poor business move. I don't speak to his character, I don't speak to him as a human being, or what he's almost certainly guilty of. I kept it as clean, above the belt, polite, and nice as humanly possible, despite him actively antagonizing people that I know online. Again, he's like bragging that he's working during a writer's strike.
Which is weird and bad.
Exploiting loopholes around an actor's strike. Just hiring people he's friends with and underaged people almost for roles.
Very unsettling.
And this is the same dude who had entire blogs and tweets and photos of him in connection with child sex predators, and who was named in a federal court case about the sexual assault of multiple underage women by his BFF, one of which of those cases took place at his residence. If my dog bites someone's face off, I am held legally responsible. I feel like he should have been as well, but as we've established, apparently white privilege is real in Hollywood. And
That's why he dyed his hair like that. More privilege.
And the thing is, anytime someone asks him a question and he gets heat for doing something dumb, which is pretty consistent if I'm being frank, he'll just post like a Fleischer or Superman image or like a comic book thing from like Grant Morrison or whatever and be like, oh, I love Superman. Or no text at all, just the image. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, is that the symbol we're going to get for Superman? Is he going to have the trunks again? Is he like... They're children with a bunch of jangled keys in front of their faces. They forget the stupid thing that he just did, and they immediately rush off to, oh my god, oh, this is best Superman ever. No trailer, no scenes have been filmed yet, but it's the best Superman movie ever made, because they've imagined it, which is actually amazing, because these people are being hyped up. This is your dream come true. This is your fantasy Superman brought to life. So whatever suit you're imagining is definitely what he'll do. And whatever tone you're imagining is definitely what he'll do. And whatever action scene you're imagining is definitely what he'll do. And let me tell you, even if he made 80% of the people happy, 20% of them would be like, that's not what I was imagining. Mm-hmm. And that's of the people who are still on board with his budget version of Henry Cavill movies. Where the Justice League just happened off screen, so just accept that Phase 1 already happened. And here's a Superman who's functionally in the same position Clark was around Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman early in his Daily Planet career. So could have just been a Henry Cavill movie. The more you hear, it's like he just wanted to do Henry Cavill, but without Henry Cavill. And he cast a dude who isn't even that much younger than Henry Cavill.
Well, let's be honest. It's not that hard to sell. I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to sell that he's a little younger than what he actually is.
Yeah, he looks younger now than he does in Batman vs. Superman, which was 8 years ago now. And mind you, throughout that 8 years, he could have come back at any time and tried to several times, and DC forbade him from coming back. So you can't punish him for having aged because Warner Brothers refused to let him step into the role again. Like, I'm almost certain I could have lied to you and say he cast someone older than Henry Cavill, showed you the pictures, and I probably could have convinced you. Because Henry does not look old.
Yeah, he really doesn't.
So...
I genuinely have trouble thinking, like, we were talking... I don't remember when or why, but we were talking about, like, man, who would you cast if you couldn't cast Henry Cavill? And we struggled for a while because it's hard to think of someone that's better than Henry Cavill for Superman.
Yeah. Yeah. And we were talking about this earlier, too, because we were talking about the whole himbo of steel, I want the Dorcas of socially awkward superpowers. Okay, if you like that character archetype, find it, that's not who Superman is. Don't morph him into that, because what people are describing Superman as is Billy Batson. They're describing Shazam.
That really is just the character they're describing. I always feel like whenever someone's misinterpreting character, there's probably a comic book character that is that.
Yeah, and they would probably love that. And I have no problem if they were like, we can't recast Superman, we're just going to have Shazam lead the Justice League in a Superman-esque role. Kind of dumb, but functionally what James Gunn is going to write anyway. Also, I think it's super screwed up that he's like, I'm keeping the Peacemaker cast intact because they're my friends. I'm casting Nathan Fillion because he's my friend. Zachary Levi, who I literally went on vacation with after his movie came out and told him he would totally be in here. Oh, he's not Shazam anymore. So clearly...
Zachary Levi was great.
Clearly the people he says are his friends are not always his friends.
Zachary Levi was a great Shazam. And tonally, I feel like that's a pretty easy shift into what he's trying to do if he's trying to go for a
Here's
lighter
the thing.
tone.
Even if you say, oh, well, he was too goofy in Shazam 2, so write him to be less goofy. He's been in serious roles before. He was in a biopic about Kurt Warner, the quarterback for the Rams, the same year Shazam came out. He looks more buff, butch, macho, and serious in that than he does as Shazam.
Yeah.
So that's on the costume and the tone and the editing and like the script.
What was people's consensus on Shazam 2? Was it good?
The consensus was 2 layers of hyperbole. On either side you had, it's the greatest movie ever made, Hack Snyder could never, and on the other side you had, this is a CGI slugfest, this is terrible. And in the middle was the general consensus of, meh, could have been better.
I was getting kind of a meh vibe from it, but I wanted it to be good because I liked his Shazam.
But don't worry, at the end, instead of the pre-planned Batman and Superman recruiting Shazam into the Justice League, they replaced it with James Gunn's wife recruiting him for the Suicide Squad.
That's dumb. Also,
Yeah.
don't they put a bomb in you for the Suicide Squad?
They basically were just like, sometimes we work with the JSA, so like we'll keep you on retainer. I'm the new Amanda
Does that
Waller.
imply that they would be putting a bomb in a child?
I wouldn't put it past them. I mean, if you've read some of James Gunn's tweets, he's said it about doing a lot worse to kids, so I think the bomb in the neck might be the best option.
Also, one of my favorite things from, I think it was in Justice League Unlimited, actually, I think we were talking about the fight between Shazam and Superman, that like Lex Luthor manipulates them into fighting each other.
Yeah.
Which is just a great episode.
Mm-hmm.
When it's revealed during that fight that he's a child, because they didn't know that,
Mm-hmm.
suddenly like they're discussing members and stuff, and it's like, well, I'm okay, right? And everyone looks at him, and there's this moment of, oh, wait, am I not okay? Am I about to get kicked out of the Justice League because I'm a child?
Yeah, it's...
And it's like, that is a fair point. Like, what happens when the Justice League realizes he's a child?
The thing is, even if he was like, oh, I'm not going to keep you as Shazam, I want someone else for Shazam. If I was friends with someone and I was the reason he was no longer going to be able to make a third movie in his franchise or be in a Justice League movie, I would feel like I was kind of responsible with finding him someplace else to, like, find employment within the franchise.
Especially
I'd be like,
since you have the amount of control that he probably has.
yeah. I'd be like, hey, you want to be character X, Y, or Z?
And he's clearly good at just shelling out roles to people he wants to have around him.
I'm waiting to find out that he's cast his wife as the new Wonder Woman at this point. Like, it's painful. And people will be like, oh, well, Zack Snyder's wife was a producer on his movies. Being a producer on a movie, she was already going to help her husband do this work. He just ensured that she got paid for the job she was already going to be doing.
He himself described her as like the person who controls her insanity.
Yeah, she keeps him in line, and also she's been producing movies and commercials longer than he's been shooting commercials and movies. So she has that. You look at James Gunn's wife, name one movie she's a leading role character in that he didn't direct. They don't exist. She now has more movie appearances than any other DC character. So you can let that sink in. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of vent that out of my system of like, in the long run, it's good for people to see how this doesn't work so that the actual reboot that happens or whatever comes after this can learn from this and not suck balls.
Also, if you're going to go for nostalgia, I would have gone for the Nick Cage Superman, because that's a totally bizarre angle that no one would expect. If you're going for different and you're going for nostalgia, I feel like that's a direction, that...
Or if you're just going for nostalgia, just do Brandon Routh.
Brandon Routh too. I'd love to see Brandon Routh Superman come back. Didn't they bring him back for like a CW?
Yeah, for Crisis on Infinite Earths, he was there for like 2 episodes, and then they sidelined him. And his basically the contract was you get more per season, and the CW's like, we're firing you and your wife, and he was like, we can negotiate the contracts or whatever. Like, we don't have to. Like, no, this isn't a negotiation. You're gone. Your final day will be you as Superman. Bye. Get out. And they didn't talk it over. They just kicked him to the curb. This is the same CW, though, that nearly paralyzed their Batwoman and then blamed her for everything when she stepped away from the role because she'd nearly been paralyzed twice, and they'd melted the face off of a man and actually turned a personal assistant for a director into a paraplegic and refused to pay her medical bills until members of the cast and crew were like, we saw what happened. You guys are the reason she'll never be able to, like, do jumping jacks again.
Jeez.
Yep.
CW is really just the proto DC.
Oh, yeah. And hasn't been profitable since, like, basically the end of Smallville.
Yikes.
Which is a very long period of time to not make money.
Is Superman just like... Is mishandling Superman just like the omen of terrible things to come?
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, people are going to see how stupid this is. Hopefully whoever buys this stuff at a garage sale next will learn from it. Or by like 2035, 2040, most of the Justice League characters will be common, like they'll be public domain. They'll have expired their whole copyright on the character. So fuck them. We'll just make whatever we want and they can't stop us. You could film it now and just wait to release it in like however many years.
Do you imagine if the rest of Zack Snyder's Justice League stuff just came out once their rights expired?
Well, here's the thing. His charity event sold out in like 7 minutes, and they were really expensive tickets because it's charity. And it was last minute. It wasn't even like really well put out that it was happening when it happened. If you told me, hey, he wants to crowdfund making his movies, the dude's raised a buttload for charity. I'm certain that he could find private backers and fans who would...
Not to mention, he has so many good relationships, I feel like, with all the different cast and crew people that he could easily get
a lot of pro bono work.
Yeah.
There's a world where this stuff will happen, whether a studio realizes that they need a quick No Way Home or Logan-style movie to recoup their purchasing cost of having bought DC from the garage sale. Oh, well, let's do Justice League 2 and 3, or Justice League 2 and 3 as one big mega movie, or a limited series, or whatever. And they'll get as many of the old cast back as possible, and they'll do the thing. Or the fans will. But people have to watch this be terrible and learn, because the Superman casting sucks, the premise sucks, every other actor he's cast sucks, and the amount of just, like... The amount of, like, bragging he's done and like promises he will not be able to deliver is setting him up for failure even if he'd made a competent film. It to the point that even The Onion and other parody sites are just like, oh, James Gunn informed fans to just imagine a Superman movie, and it's basically that. Mainstream non-comic book people are making fun of him. The stock prices of Warner Brothers is plummeting. And they just revealed the trailer for the new Willy Wonka movie, and it looks terrible. The
new Willy Wonka movie?
Yes. So that's going to be another box office failure because it's an expensive looking movie that won't do well. So Warner Brothers is going to be further in the hole. So even if...
Willy Wonka?
Do you remember Batman vs. Superman? They're like, Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman. That's like $3 billion. That should be $1 billion each. Because they had this fallacy that you're tapping into 3 separate markets instead of triple tapping the same market. Which means you are counting on each person going to see it 3 times. That doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And again, second DC movie. That's a ridiculous... It took, like, Marvel, like, 16 movies to reach $2 billion. It's a ridiculous thing.
Yeah.
With all these new people in Superman Legacy, that's got to be, like, a $5 billion movie by their math. So, if any CGI sucks, if anything deviates from a thing, if Superman ever stops smiling for a second, if any building gets any type of rubble or, like, destruction, if it doesn't make $5 billion, if there aren't solo movies for each of these characters before they show up, then I say we burn the whole thing to the ground, because that's what they tried to do to Zack Snyder for a decade, and successfully leveraged the death of his daughter to push him out and never let him back in. And I think after a decade of someone being terrible, it's not rude or unreasonable to be like, okay, you spent 10 years doing this thing to someone and his fans. They're going to do it back to you now. So you can understand what you did wrong and learn from it and not do it again. So overall, I'd say that my excitement for Superman Legacy is pretty low. Just not that high.
I'm looking forward to how terrible it's going to be.
Yeah, the reckoning that's coming is what I'm excited for. Like the cold shower of reality raining down on all these nerds. So yeah. But yeah, I was dumbfounded. I'm like, I know I'm biased, so I dislike these things, but I feel like regular people are gonna see this and like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, look. I mean, you just need eyes to not like what the Flash did.
Yeah, with his crystal skull cowl that has a weird back of the head thing going on.
Let alone that horrifying eating animation.
Or the baby put in a microwave, which is pretty infamous now. But yeah, Oh, Nathan Fillion, we finally got him as Green Lantern. Yay, as Guy Gardner. What? Hawkgirl's in this. Okay, she's barely 20. Why? Mr. Terrific is here. Okay, it's that guy from X-Men First Class.
I would say they're going to try to make some sort of joke about her being reincarnated at a younger age, or like getting involved at a younger age after being reincarnated, but that would require a knowledge of the comics that I don't think James Gunn possesses.
Also, let's be real, any chance of Hawkman from Black Adam showing up again and doing a romance is out the door, because that dude's nearly 40 and she's barely 20, and I don't care reincarnations.
Now, hold on. James Gunn is in charge of this. That could still happen.
That's a fair point. And you know what? Birds
in fact,
are known for...
age up the guy, make his hair a bit gray, and he'll probably be all for it.
So, yeah. I honestly don't understand how Dwayne Johnson got kicked to the curb for making more money than Peter Safran or James Gunn have.
Do you think they could get him to come back?
Honest to God, if this fails and they just hard cut and stop everything they're doing, they shut down the factory and say, we need to reassess. I could totally see Dwayne Johnson coming back, Henry Cavill coming back, Ben Affleck coming back, Gal Gadot coming back, and them just being like, okay, let's wrap up this whole story with Darkseid, do a proper Flash reboot, where at the end he runs, and then it just hard cuts to a new Gotham or a new Metropolis, and we have our new actors there, but we at least wrap up their story.
George Clooney's back. George
Clooney's Batman is back. Because the Flash only knows how to reboot timelines where they end up in the George Clooney verse. So yeah, I honestly didn't expect this to go on as long as it did, but it's that's what happens. You're like, what is happening?
Mm-hmm.
It's confusing. So yeah, everyone, prediction. I would say Superman Legacy will make no more than $600 million at the box office. I would say they'll probably hit around there. Definitely will not make more than $700 million.
Once the reviews come out, it's gonna be bad.
And even if the reviews are nice to it, and they won't be, it won't make the money, because again, the target audience is so divided, you're not going to appeal to them. The general audience liked Henry Cavill, and they're going to be pissed when this guy isn't him. If you thought it was rough, we're going to compare Henry Cavill to Christopher Reeve, who hasn't been Superman for 40 years. Henry Cavill was Superman less than a year ago. He will have been Superman slightly more than a year ago by the time Legacy debuts. By the time the first trailer comes out, it may not even have been a full year. The comparisons will not just be why would you compare it? He's just trying to be a new thing. First of all, where was that energy for Henry Cavill? Second of all, this was a year ago, and he had a movie in development that this replaced. The comparisons are entirely valid, because if this isn't hands down a vast improvement over anything he would have made, it makes no sense to have made this movie.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't make more money than Batman vs. Superman did, missing 30 minutes of plot, competing against Civil War, it makes no sense to make this movie. If you can't beat Zack Snyder when the odds are stacked against him, and the odds are all in your favor with total creative control, fuck you. Get a new job.
Yeah.
So this has been the podcast. Who knows what I'll call it? Probably What the Fuck is James Gunn Doing?
Probably.
Seems like an adequate title. Have a nice day, I guess. I don't know how to end this. If you ever think that you're unqualified for a job, just remember what James Gunn is doing and think you're more qualified for whatever you want to do than he is for what he's doing now.
Just fail upwards.
Chase your dreams.